We are going to start at the beginning. Tell me about when you first met Jennifer Farber.
I met Jennifer in the fall of 1990 at the graduate dramatic writing program at NYU. We had a connection, we shared a sense of humor, we became fast friends, and were part of one another's lives for almost 30 years.
What was your relationship like at the time that she disappeared? How often were you guys talking or seeing each other? I mean, I would imagine you were privy to what was going on in her life.
I was. We were in very close contact, but the kind of contact that works for a mother of 5 young children, you know, whom she's transporting to sporting events and artistic activities and, you know, friend outings and getting them to school, and then dealing with an incredibly contentious divorce.
When was the last time you saw her?
I'm pretty sure the last time I saw her was at the Fancy Car Show when they came in for that in April of 2019. But we talked and texted the night before she disappeared.
Do you remember what you guys talked about the last conversation you had?
You know, it certainly wasn't a conversation that illuminated the events to come. It was a very typical, wonderful, funny exchange.
How did you find out that she had disappeared? I mean, I'm assuming May 24th, 2019 started off as a typical day.
I was driving to this retreat in rural Oregon, and I saw that I had some texts from a Connecticut number. I was driving with an acquaintance and we needed to stop for lunch in any event. So when I checked my texts, they were from Lauren Almeida, whom I knew as Jennifer's longtime babysitter and loyal friend. And she asked me if I'd heard from Jennifer that day, which was really odd, just because Jennifer was the most reliable person I've ever known. Someone who would text or call to let you know that she was going to be on time as opposed to early. So, you know, literally when I saw the Connecticut number, I immediately had a just prickly feeling, like what's going on? I immediately felt just a sense of horror because it was atypical.
Did you at that time have any inkling of what had happened to her?
I mean, I had no sense of what had actually happened to her, but yes, my suspicions were immediately that something dangerous, potentially violent, had happened to her.
Did you immediately go to Fotis in terms of what had happened to her?
Yes. I mean, I guess the simple answer is yes. For any number of reasons, certainly knowing the conflict and the ongoing struggles in family court, some of his recent behavior, knowing Jennifer's concerns for her safety, and just knowing on a broader level that in cases like this, when something happens to one of the partners, the perpetrator is generally the other partner. Your thoughts don't immediately go to a less probable cause. So, you know, there was the thinking that perhaps she'd been in an accident and had been taken to a hospital and it somehow just had not been reported effectively to her next of kin. But once area hospitals had been checked, that was ruled out. So the only real possibility was that something very bad had happened to her.
As this investigation continued over the years, were you privy to what investigators found? Did you know about the evidence that they had?
Great question. Yes, to a greater, sometimes lesser extent. The investigators were incredible. They were very respectful and forthcoming, and made a real point to keep us apprised of what they were uncovering.
Her trial lasted 7 weeks. You were there every single day. What was the hardest part about being there daily for all of you guys? Some of that evidence was very difficult to see.
It was very difficult at a lot of points. I think seeing the evidence presented so systematically was incredibly important and really illuminating, because just the cumulative effect of it made clear and filled in a whole bunch of tiny little gaps in the larger picture of what happened on May 24th, what may have happened subsequently, what we know did happen subsequently, what happened in the days leading up to the actions of May 24th. So, you know, I'm grateful that I was able to be there, but it was, you know, it was traumatizing. I and others just had to be there and take it in and take it with us. And, you know, I'll be processing this the rest of my life.
You heard the word guilty. You heard the word guilty 6 times. What was that like?
I mean, it was stunning in the literal sense of that word. I know that I felt like I couldn't move, you know, just sort of hanging in space, waiting for the next word. And it was really a kind of transporting, unreal experience. I mean, you know, it's a cliche, but when time stops or it slows down and you are just taking in something that's so decisive. So I guess that's the best way I can describe it.
What does this verdict mean to you, to Gloria, to Jennifer's children?
I think the verdict has brought a real sense of validation that something absolutely unspeakable happened to Jennifer, that it really happened. And that we at least have a sense of relief that this case finally was able to come to trial, and that the jury saw and heard what we were seeing and hearing. I think that just emotionally and psychologically was very important. I mean, what it doesn't do is provide any sense of closure, because Jennifer is still gone and we still haven't found her.
Can there ever be closure in this case? Does finding her body give you closure?
You know, I can't speak for other people. I think everyone processes grief differently, everyone mourns differently, everybody moves through the world differently. So for someone, you know, they might be able to label something as closure. I think for me, you know, there will always just be a giant hole. And I think that is something that you learn to live with. You know, you learn that it's there. Sometimes, you know, an absence then actually becomes a presence. So you kind of interact with the absence of the person. And of course, you know, Jennifer is still very much around all of us all the time. You know, the memories and experiences and the spirit of a person don't go away. And in fact, I think when there is this sense of absence, what there is present of her becomes all the more vivid.